Yeah.
Which if you
Yeah.
think about rap, right? You think about rap. You think about
Mhm.
it gives you a totally different perspective on rap, on sports, on all of that, because you're like, all right, are these brothers out here just like living off of their trauma? Is that why they're so, some of them are so volatile and so crazy? Like, because they, unless they identify heavily with their trauma,
Mhm.
they don't feel valid. They don't feel, they don't feel important unless they're constantly revisiting the things that hurt them, which then leads to the addiction and all the women and all the everything else. That's
Right.
wild,
You see
man.
it all the time. You see the rappers the singers, the actors, the actresses. They more specifically like your favorite hood rapper, right? Your favorite trap rapper, right?
Absolutely.
Cool. I'm a fan of the music, but you can study them and you can realize who becomes worse and worse, like more violent and more disrespectful, the
Yeah.
more money that they make, right?
Yeah.
Or there's even some R singers. I'm not even going to say any names, but there's some R&B singers, right? Like more recent ones, not even the one you probably think I'm thinking about, but there's some other ones where you see some, not, but there's some that I'm a fan of, and you start hearing these stories coming out, and you're like, where is all of this coming from, right? And what you start to realize is they have certain undercover addictions for channeling
Yeah.
that that made them who they are, and they feel like I stopped doing this, right? Not knowing that continuing to operate off of that,
Mm.
it builds up and eventually and they take it a little too far.
Yeah.
And they might feel like, oh man, what I was doing was harmless. Like, no, it wasn't harmless. You were harming yourself, and you obviously harm people in the process.
Yeah.
So
Oof, that's
yeah.
wild. So when you're building your self
Yeah.
identity, you're confronting your trauma. Um,
Right.
how do you maintain that when situations come up? How do you maintain that? Like, are there books that you read? Are there videos that you watch? Do you subscribe to certain like influencers or authors? Like,
Hmm.
because for the men or even the women who are listening to this podcast, and they're just like, maybe that's what's going on with my husband, or maybe that's what's going on with my sons, or maybe that's what's going on with my brother. What are some
Hmm.
resources maybe that you have used that helped you alleviate some of that pain, like in between sessions, right? So in between therapy, in
Hmm.
between therapists, when you're like changing stuff up, what were some of the things that you did to help you become more free of that trauma and forgive, in order to actually breathe and take full breaths that are just for you and they aren't living out of a past
Right.
situation?
One, I would say, really develop this inner voice, and by inner have to be you. It could be the memory of maybe someone else, but uh, develop this inner voice that consistently tells you that everything's going to be okay. Like everything's going to be okay.
Hmm.
Everything's going to be okay when you're going through it. But if you've been through a lot and you're still standing, trust me, like you're going to get through it, right? That's the first thing.
Yeah.
Because I've had some very low points, where breaking points, right? Where I
Yes,
was
sir.
like, man, this is just unbearable.
Yes, sir.
But there's always that inner voice that tells me, like, listen, you have to believe that everything's going to be okay. That's the first thing. Um, Second thing, I know when we talk about mindset coaching and motivational speaking, listen, YouTube has, if it wasn't for YouTube and the TD Jakes motivation and the Eric Thomas motivation, man,
Listen.
if I was given like $5 every time I went to watch a YouTube, a TD Jakes or a Eric Thomas motivation video, man, I'd be sitting on some cash right now. So understand resources when it
Yeah.
comes to resources that can help you with your mental. Maybe these were my counselors before I had the finances to get a
Absolutely.
counselor.
Absolutely.
These were my counselors before I was in that space where I was comfortable to sit in front of another human being
Yeah.
and tell some things about myself. So
Mm.
that would be the second thing. And the third, continue to run toward that, whatever that better version of yourself that you want to be. You don't have to tell other people who this better version of you is. If it's losing the weight, if it's becoming a better father, if it's, overcoming anxiety. I've had to do all three that I just said. Continue to run toward that better version of yourself. Don't ever let that better version, that best version of yourself, don't let that person get away. You're going to struggle. You're going to be afraid. There's going to be tears. There's going to be pain. There's going to be hurt. There's going to be loneliness. But no matter what, do not let that better version of yourself get away, because what I've witnessed in my household growing up, in my different households growing up, is that regret is far worse. Regret feels far worse than anything you feel like you're experiencing when you go through it. Yeah. And regret is just having to look back and say, what if I would have really, overcome the trauma? What if I would have stopped doubting myself? What if I would put myself in better environments? You don't want to have those what if lingering over your head. Just go through the struggle, and it'll be worth it.
Man, bro, that's so good.